right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And Jacob, you're not in your usual place. You're on an undisclosed location. Just kidding, but you're not where you normally are. You're on the other side of the Atlantic, and I'm so glad that you're here on this side. Welcome to Catching Up. How you doing?
I'm okay in Jesus. I'm back where I came from, New York. I'm in Manhattan at the moment. But wherever you are, we're glad to be with you. In today's world, geography doesn't really matter much anymore most of the time. The jet lag does, but not the location. So here we are.
Amen, Jacob. Well, welcome. Great to have you, and glad you're on this side, at least for now. Your short trip, but nonetheless a good trip. And you're in New York now, so blessings to you and all the brothers and sisters who are watching today, who will watch later. Welcome in the name of the Lord. So blessed to have Jacob on. So blessed to have you on. And of course, those who watch later, blessings to you as well in the Lord Jesus. Jacob, any thoughts on New York? I mean, it's different than when you first came a long time ago and you started traveling out to New York in different areas. You haven't been back since 2018, 2019 in that area. So
I haven't been back since COVID. And look, the world's in the power of the wicked one, but in New York, you have to accent that. It's just the way it's the main city of the main country in the world at this particular time in history. So a lot of what the devil does, he does here. I'm about 1 mile from the United Nothing, also known as the United Nations. The devil has an office there. And he's burning the midnight oil. So this is essentially where we are in New York. I will be speaking. Memorial has an affiliated church here in Manhattan, Church of the Open Door. I will be speaking at the Church of the Open Door on Saturday, this coming Saturday, which is tomorrow, at 7 p.m., I believe. Church of the Open Door on 3rd Avenue and 7th Street, 3rd Avenue and 7th Street, 1 block south of St. Mark's Place. We shall be there at the Church of the Open Door. Also, I will be speaking in Devore at Marco's church. I'll let Marco announce the times of that, but it'll be on a Saturday and a Sunday. And I will be with our friend and brother John Holler in Columbus, Ohio. It is the anniversary of Brother Steve Mitchell, a dear friend and brother to all of us, who went to be with the Lord, unfortunately, at a young age. Well, fortunately for him, unfortunately for us. It'll be anniversary of his homegoing. But for the rest of us who are left here, we miss him dearly. So we will be doing a tribute to Steve at Fellowship Bible Chapel, in addition to the regular meeting. So it'll be a 2-part meeting, one concerning the memorial or tribute to Steve, and one, of course, will just be the normal meeting. John Haller will be recording his own prophecy update a little bit earlier that day because of my visit. So that will be in Columbus, Ohio, Los Angeles, and New York. This trip is something of an experiment because everything was frozen for a while during COVID. We're just beginning to become active again in terms of itineraries and so forth. So here we are, catching up.
Amen. Jacob, we'll kind of catch up in a minute. Just want to let everybody know. Jacob's coming. Well, if you're on the East Coast, anywhere on the East Coast, grab a train, get a flight. I don't care. Get somewhere and get to New York and get to see Jacob. It'll be a great honor. It'll be a blessing for you to be there and learn God's word from Jacob Prasch. If you're on the West Coast, on the 17th and 18th, come here. And Jacob, we're getting calls from up Northern California, from Texas to Arizona. So it'll be sort of a reunion for a lot of believers coming to Southern California. On the 17th, you're teaching a class. It's the economic conditions of the world are tough, and we're going to talk about that today. But we're going to try to save people some money. And so you're offering a class on how to understand the Old Testament in light of the New, something that I would say you can go to a seminary and pay about $3,000 for that class. You're going to save people some money by taking your class, part 1 and part 2, and be a great help to understand the Old Testament in light of the New. I recommend people to come. It's at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 17th. That's a great class. Jacob, you've done some lectures out here when we had a mission school, and that was
Yeah.
great. People loved it. Obviously, the times and seasons have changed, but this is going to be similar to that. A great class to understand the old and light of the new.
One slight correction. In better days, you would have spent $3,000 for a theological education that would teach you about hermeneutics. Now you're going to spend $5,000 to $10,000 to learn about market research and Peter Drucker and secular philosophies of marketing applied to church growth. And you're gonna pay a lot more money to learn things that are going to be useless and won't work anyway. So that's what you get in most seminaries now. Not all of them, but most of them, it becomes that.
Yes.
Certainly Fuller, which is not far from where we're going to be in Pasadena. That place is that place may as well just the most Christ honoring thing Fuller Seminary can do is shut down.
Yeah, we got Claremont Theological Seminary. We got a Fuller not too far from here, several Bible colleges. So here we are, Jacobs. You got to save people some money, take the class, enjoy it, don't have to pay it, and learn something. You actually got to learn something. And then on Sunday, you're back at the teaching at CCD. So that's going to be great. So make a note of that. Then you're going to the Midwest, and then you're heading home. So hopefully you come back again very soon, brother. So that would be a great blessing. Yeah. I want to let everybody know about the podcast schedule. It's come out, so people enjoy the podcast and they look forward to it. On Saturday, which is tomorrow, Jacob's going to be speaking on Isaiah 22, the Valley of Vision, followed by Sunday by yours truly on Ephesians 2, being reconciled to Christ. That's a great chapter in Ephesians chapter 2. Monday, this episode will be aired on podcast, and then on Wednesday, Sandy's going to teach us from Jude. There's only one chapter in Jude 1, and of course, Jacob's back on Thursday, Romans 6, part 1, and you could also catch Jacob on Romans on live on Thursdays. So he's teaching he's a little bit ahead of the podcast. This is just for the podcast. If you want to watch where Jacob is at now, which I believe, Jacob, have you started Romans 11 yet?
We finished Romans 11. We're going to Romans 12 next Thursday.
Romans 12, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Romans 12. I'm sorry. You haven't started that one yet. So yes, so you're a little bit ahead, but on the podcast, you can go back and listen to the archives and the Dilemma of Laodicea, which will be next Friday, part 2, which we started this week. So that's gonna be the schedule. All right, Jacob, I think we got it all under control. Let's catch up. And Jacob, it seems fitting. We're going into this weekend. It is the 21st anniversary day of infamy of 9/11, and of course the attack in Manhattan of the Twin Towers, and a horrible day in American history. Over 3,000 people died. You have a very close connection to that because family members died, and your family member died in that horrible event. But just wanted to encapsulate it. You're there in New York. It seems fitting we talk about it. Is this Sunday? You're there. How far have we gone since 2001? It seemed to be a revival. Many people call revival at the time. People went to church. Congress was praying. Senators were holding hands, singing "God Bless America." 21 years later, is the world better, worse? Is America better, worse? Where are we at?
America is more godless now than it was on September 11th. It is generally more godless. I'm not demeaning the fact that there are true Christians and some who are becoming more godly, but generally America is more godless than it was then. If you look then, the Southern Baptists, for instance, were still a primarily theologically conservative, evangelical, scripturally based denomination. Now it can no longer even be considered Christian by most biblical definitions. When you have the president, have the J.D. Greer, saying that the task of Baptists and of born-again Christians should be to be the number one spokesman for homosexual and lesbian rights. This is what's become of the nation's biggest evangelical denomination since September 11th. What you see happening here was very much like what you saw happening in the book of Jeremiah or the last days of Judah before the Babylonian captivity. God gave warnings, God sent messengers, God gave signs about what was coming, and the people still wouldn't listen. And as the signs happened, And the prophecies of Joel and Isaiah began to happen with the 4 invasions of Nebuchadnezzar. He invaded 4 times. Each time it happened, the people still didn't repent. They still didn't believe until the captivity ultimately happened. And that is something I'm not just saying about the United States. It's something I see happening in the Western world. If anything, Europe is even further gone. Canada is further gone. Australia is at best no better, and New Zealand is at best no better. So it's not just America, but spiritually, nothing has happened. There was no wake-up call. Politically, of course, it is even more of a joke. It is even more of a joke. When Donald Trump tried to exercise common sense and say, we have to draw a distinction between Islamic and Islamists, and not give visas and immigration visas to people from countries where Islamic terror is fomented against the United States until we can verify that they are not Islamists. He was called a racist and an Islamophobe, and they were saying it was a Muslim ban and all this kind of stuff. The corrupt media has done everything it can to put New York City and the United States at further strategic risk and at further risk to terror. They've done everything they can to put America more at risk to terror. The media has actually done this. I'm right across the street from the New York Times. I wish the New York Times had been hit on September 11th instead of the World Trade Center. I wish the New York Times had been hit instead of the World Trade Center. It's a terrible. It's from right across the street from where I am. It's absolutely a terrible publication, as is the Washington Compost, and the lies of the media that come out of New York City. CBS News is here. The lies that come out of this city are phenomenal. But Fox is here, and Fox is a mixture of good and bad, truth and error. And Wall Street Journal, New York Post, similarly, they are more balanced. But what's interesting is about a quarter of a mile from where I am is something called Hudson Yards. CNN has its corporate headquarters in Atlanta, but its news operations facility is pretty much in New York at Hudson Yards, about a quarter of a mile from me. And you see what's happened. Because of declining viewership, the way that they've been hit, they are getting rid of some of their left-wing biased news commentators and replacing them with people who are more balanced, but not because of any ideological reason, just simply because the viewership has decreased so much. It's just a financial decision or an economic decision to get rid of these people who have dragged it into the gutter, that trying to salvage themselves. But overall, no, the nation has not improved since September 11th. There were people who tried to make it improve, but they failed to do so. Donald Trump did try to ban immigration from Islamic countries, as opposed to someone like George Bush, who continued the express visa program for Saudi Arabians for a full year after the 9/11 attacks. He just kept giving them visas, even though most of the hijackers were Saudi Arabians, and even though it was financed by people from the House of Saud, which is the Saudi Arabian government. And he and Cheney knew it. They blocked those 28 pages that have still not been published.
That's right.
Although they're partly declassified. The betrayal of America by the Bush administration, which shows you that the Republican Party is no better than the Democratic Party.
No, I blame them for as much 9/11 as anybody else. They are particular participants in that.
Yeah, the first target the United States should have took out after September 11th was the Bush Ranch. Am I allowed to say that?
That didn't happen.
The first enemy target we should have took. This is why Cheney's daughter hates Trump.
Yeah, this Cheney. Yeah,
Trump was 21 years ago. Trump was a patriot. Her father sold the country down the river to Saudi oil interests.
Yeah, still does. So politically, we're no better. We're actually 100 times, 1,000 times worse. Socially, 1,000 times worse. I mean, New York is going through a horrible violence, especially in certain areas. Obviously, the rest of the country, but spiritually, far, far from it.
There
So
must be a
21 years.
spiritual blindness, Marco. When you see what's been done to San Francisco and to Chicago and to New York, but particularly places like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit, San Francisco, Seattle, all these cities run by left-wing Democrats, and people will still vote for them.
Yeah.
You know, you lost 50,000 jobs in New York, 25,000 high-paid jobs at Amazon, and then at least as many spin-off jobs that would have come from it. You're talking 50,000 jobs probably were lost from the constituency, Long Island City and Queens, of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and people are stupid enough to vote for her again after the damage she did economically to the. If people are that stupid, they have no right to complain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's where we are here, Jacob. 9/11 has certainly been a distant memory. I don't even think people really understand the implications, how the world really changed at that point. You know, you think of what happened with COVID, that changed the world. That certainly changed the world at that time, 2001. Look at all the rights that the U.S. citizens lost with the Patriot Act and all the. It's
unlike the Israelis who have the common sense to profile Islamic passengers. The United States gives the Saudi Arabians express visas to enter the country and profiles loyal Americans. That is how corrupt our government is. That is how evil the Bush administration was.
Yeah.
And again, people who think the Republican Party is any different than the Democrats. Look, you have real people like Ted Cruz and Governor DeSantis and Donald Trump who are conservatives. But the party leadership, McCarthy and McConnell and the Bush dynasty, these people are no better than Schumer and Pelosi. They're no better. In fact, in most respects, they're no different, except cosmetically.
They just call themselves Republicans, right? That's really all they.
September 11th has meant nothing.
Yeah, it has meant nothing, and I think for people, it doesn't really mean anything to them. I mean, the country may remember on Sunday, they will look back, but when you look back, you have nothing to look forward to because you're still not even in the same as you're in a worse situation, spiritually, economically, socially. Jacob, let's go across the pond, just where you just left there. And Queen Elizabeth died, 96 years old, a whole legacy. She's been in there since, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, how long has she been queen?
70 years.
70 years, right? Yeah, 7 decades. And now she's passing on. So let's talk about her legacy, what she did, some of the questions that have come up. I also want to bring up what a lot of new, I guess the BBC was harping on this. So was the guy from what is that, Mellon University, Carnegie Mellon University, about her legacy as a white colonialist. What do young people feel about the monarchy? How do they see it in the new change? This is a new change. This hasn't been around for 70 years. There's a king, King Charles III. And what is that going to look like for the nation and also for the other countries such as Canada, New Zealand, Australia, who are under the crown? Let's unpack that a little bit more. Your thoughts. Queen Elizabeth dies. Your thoughts on this?
Franklin Graham said that he believed she was an actual saved Christian. I know there's a close friend of Moriel, who's met her and gave her the book Intercessor by Rees Howells. She was at least like Margaret Thatcher, sympathetic to born-again Christians, as we would call them.
Yes.
And at least their moral values. Whether she was saved or not, I don't know. But she was a woman of personal integrity, and she, in the Blitz, drove Jeeps and worked as a mechanic, despite the fact she was the future monarch. You know, she was very much a people's queen. She's the only queen that most of the people alive in the world have ever known. You know, She was the queen during all the time of the baby boomers. Now in England, of course, this was incredible. She honored the Beatles. She gave the Beatles MBEs. These are we were member of the British Empire. And the Beatles, the last song on their last album, Her Majesty, was a tribute on behalf of the generation to the Queen. I mean, so the younger generation of the baby boomers were not anti-monarch. You had it. The anti-monarchism was basically something that came from the punk movement. Not, the God Save the Queen, she's a fascist regime, this kind of thing. But the punk movement never had the musical or sociological impact of the Beatles or anything. It was over within a year. It was just a failure commercially. Came and went. But most British people did respect the Queen. In the Commonwealth, there was divided opinions about republicanism, but most people did respect the Queen personally. The question is what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now is problematic. King Charles III. Britain, if you read Reuben Roethler's editorial this week on the future of the monarchy, it's quite comprehensive, and it expresses the essential things people need to understand in light of the transition from Queen Elizabeth II to Charles III. Britain did have a hiatus in the monarchy for 16 years at the time of Cromwell, but most people wanted the monarchy restored with Charles II. They wanted ultimately a constitutional monarchy. They wanted a link with their past, but they wanted an institution that would give a sense of national stability above politics. So governments come, governments go in the parliamentary system, like administrations come, administrations go, but they wanted something there that was fixed and that they could identify with and gave them a sense of identity and continuity as a nation. Unlike the United States, or unlike a republic where the president is the chief of state, the Queen is the chief of state, a non-political office per se, but always there. Now, this kind of idea of this kind of constitutional monarchy has worked well in some countries, Thailand being one. There's a lot of political instability in Thailand, but the people could always look to their king. Now, I'm not a monarchist by any means. I'm simply saying that you have to look at it objectively and also biblically. The Bible speaks of kings. So I have no disrespect for the legacy of Queen Elizabeth. She was a good monarch and a good servant of the people. But now with Prince Charles, we got a problem. He is a Schwab slob.
Yeah, WF guy.
He's a Schwab slob, first of all. That's the first thing. He's not seen as being very shrewd or frankly very clever. When Princess Diana died, the monarchy lost its glamour. The fairy princess was gone. It lost its glamour when she died. The scandals with his brother, Prince Andrew, with Epstein and Clinton,
Epstein and the island,
and the antics of his son, and some people question if it is his son, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. These things have done a lot to disgrace the monarchy in the press and in the public perception. Not the Queen herself, but the institution of the monarchy. Can Prince Charles bring about a revival of it? Well, almost certainly not. Let's look at it. Britain has had other bad kings who were a moral disgrace. One of which was King James from the King James Bible. James the Sixth of England, James the First of England, Sixth of Scotland, First of England. He actually tortured women. He physically tortured women for witchcraft. He participated in their torture, among other things. He was a bad man. Okay, you had King George III. Americans didn't like it. He was probably manic depressive, but they made a movie, The Madness of King George. But there were jokes about him. Georgie, Porgy, pudding pie, kissed the girls. And okay, There's been other unpopular monarchs, and there's been some bad kings. But you'd have like Queen Victoria or the Victorian age or the Edwardian age, there would be a revival of the monarchy. After a bad one, you'd get a good one. It's very much like the book of Chronicles and Kings. You'd have good kings, like Asa and Hezekiah and people like that who'd follow on the line of David, and then you'd have bad ones who mislead the nation. Well, British history is very much like that. Unfortunately, Prince Charles is not going to be a Hezekiah or a King Asa. He's not, or a King Josiah. Or Jehoshaphat. He's not in that caliber. It's rather absurd almost. But one of the titles given to the British monarch is Defender of the Faith, which was first given by the Pope to Henry VIII for opposing the Protestant Reformation. But they kept the title and they gave it to the British monarch as the titular head of the Church of England.
Yeah.
It's a monarchical pope. I mean, now it's not a pope in the Roman Catholic sense, but it is titular. In title, the monarch is the head of the Church of England. Prince Charles has stated he does not wish to be defender of the faith. He wants to be defender of faith.
Yeah.
Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever it is, it's okay with him.
Very ecumenical.
He being the custodian of the Duchy of Cornwall, he has donated royal properties for the construction of mosques.
Yeah. Some people think he actually became a Muslim in some capacity.
Yeah, I think he'd become an anything. If he goes to India, he'd become a Hindu. If he goes to, Thailand, he'd become a Buddhist. He's that kind of way. He's just interfaith eclecticism. He's basically, theologically, you have to call him a pantheist. He doesn't believe in the Judeo-Christian ethos of British heritage. The Church of England is pretty much dead numerically. It's certainly dead theologically and spiritually and morally, and he's the head of it. So in that sense, he'd be the appropriate head of a church. He's spiritually dead, and the church is spiritually dead. Church of England is largely a joke, and he's going to be the titular head of it. This is what we're dealing with. It's almost absurd, but this is the reality. But let's look at him otherwise. Again, he's not seen as a particularly clever figure in Britain. He is certainly a globalistic in his orientation politically, but he is more politically outspoken than other monarchs have been. No other monarch has been as politically outspoken since Queen Victoria. Only his position, however, is globalist. Now, let's look at one other thing. The monarchy had a purpose before Brexit. The monarchy represented British sovereignty and British identity against the European Brussels unelected bureaucracy. It represented a preservation of British identity and sovereignty against Brussels before Brexit. That was its last viable political value. That is gone now. All you have left, essentially, is something looking for a purpose other than tourism. What purpose will the monarchy serve other than tourism in a post-Brexit Britain? It doesn't have the same function it had. People were supportive of the monarchy and not Republican because of what it represented in terms of its history, identity, and its symbolism or symbolic representation of British independence and nationalism in the face of a European takeover. That is gone now with Brexit. So what is going to be the purpose of the monarchy? You need a very strong leader to redefine the monarchy and give it a purpose other than tourism at a time like this. And I do not believe that Prince Charles has the ability to do so. To say nothing of the fact that he's a Schwab slob, and to say nothing of the fact that he is interfaith, he's pantheistic. He will not preserve the Judeo-Christian heritage of Britain or the Commonwealth at all. Nothing. It's not good. Now, what is also interesting, and I believe this is providential, that you had the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign, but now you have a new Elizabeth as prime minister. Within the same week, you have a new prime minister who's also named Elizabeth, and you have a new monarch within the same week. The fact that those two things happened in tandem with each other, I do not believe to be coincidental. I believe it something to do with providence. What God is saying in it remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Liz Truss real quick, because that's strange times in the UK. Queen's gone. You got a new prime minister whose actual name is Liz. She wasn't quite fond of the monarchy at the beginning of her youth. Maybe times have changed. But now she's the new prime minister, ready to go. And what do you think, Jacob? I mean, I know she comes from the Conservative Party. Is she more of a Bojo type? It seems like she's got it ready to go for £100 billion benefit handout for the people.
Europe is in trouble, and Britain is also in trouble. America's in trouble, but in Europe it's worse, and in Britain it's worse. The energy prices are just out of control. There was a 53% increase in energy prices several months ago. Now they're saying there can be a further 80% increase. What nation can sustain this? What elderly people on pension can sustain this? What working class families can sustain this? This is not good, and she has inherited it. I hope she will follow in the vein of Disraeli, of Balfour, of Churchill, and of Thatcher. In other words, I hope she will be a conservative. I know she's conspicuously been pro-Israel, and she went from a left-wing perspective to a conservative perspective, seeing through political liberalism for the fraud it is. I realize that, but I hope she will be an authentic conservative and not a traditional equivalent of a rhino. Britain has this equivalent of rhinos. Yes, that's right. And Bojo turned out to largely be one of them. He was not a conservative. There's issues of illegal immigration, particularly Islamic immigration, which is a major problem in Britain. A major problem, and she's got to deal with it. But she's inherited this high inflation, and she's inherited this energy crisis, and she's inherited the Ukraine. She's inherited these things. I wish her the best. I intend to pray for her. I urge other people to pray for her. I hope for the best. But what we'll get is something else.
Yeah. Well, one thing that concerns me, Jake, I'm not sure if we disagree or agree. She is part of the World Economic Forum. That is part of my concern, whether or not it's something of a distant cousin relationship or intricate in relationships with the WF. I do pray for the best. I just don't. I don't trust World Economic Forum stuff or even people that are attached to it. And I hope it's just, like I said, a distant cousin relationship, not a real working relationship. One thing for sure, she's been touted as this new diversity woman. You know, there's no country for white men, I guess, in England. That everyone is applauding her because she picked no white men and to be in her, I guess, the great office of the state. So the Treasury, somebody whose descent is from Ghana, the Foreign Secretary's families from Sierra Leone, the Home Secretary, home families from India. I guess the Health Secretary, well, she's from the UK, but I guess she's not very healthy, at least according to reports. But why is this shadow of racism coming in, Jacob? It was against Queen Elizabeth because he's saying she was part of colonialism. Now they're applauding Liz Truss because, hey, I guess there's no room for white men in England at this point.
Yes. Well, I'll take your second point first. The criticisms offered by the New York Slimes across the street from where I am at the moment came from Wesley Lowery. There were similar
Yes.
comments made on the BBC. Lowry obviously is either an idiot, a liar, or both. Queen Elizabeth came into a post-colonial and decolonializing British Empire. It stopped being imperial during her reign. The Commonwealth replaced it in part, but India was already gone, and India then included Burma, Myanmar, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. That was all gone. The British Empire in Asia was gone before she even became queen, and Africa was radically decolonializing. So Lowry is either a liar or an idiot. I personally think he's both a liar and an idiot. He's a racist. He's accusing she's this white woman and they rule 30% of the world. Not in her life. He's not talking about Queen Victoria. He's talking about Elizabeth II. So the guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's not only a liar, he's an idiot. But that's, who else would the New York Times hire? It's absolutely absurd. She's a post-colonial monarch. She is not a colonialist monarch. They're just lying. They don't even know the history. They don't even know what happened. Only somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about would say such a stupid thing. Now, Alexandra Ortega-Cortez defended this reporter from CBS for saying it. Well, that ought to tell you right there. Anything that comes out of her, empty barrels make the most noise. And when you take the lid off that barrel, all you're going to get is nonsense.
Well, Jacob, she's from New York. Maybe you could say hi to her while you're out there. I mean, I guess she's from Queens or something like that. Maybe you can make your way down there. And
constituency is in Queens, where she cost that place 25,000 high-paid jobs and another 25,000 spin-off jobs. She totally wreaked havoc with Amazon wanting to put its East Coast headquarters in her constituency in Long Island City, and she got rid of that through pure stupidity.
What a mess.
Stupidity. They wanted simply tax credits to recover development costs and construction costs. They weren't looking for any handouts. They were looking for tax relief on future earnings so they can recover their costs. Not that I love Bezos, but it's a reasonable thing. That's the way business is done. And she said this money should be spent on hospitals and schools. The money didn't even exist. She's just too stupid. But who's really stupid is any moron who voted for her. They voted themselves out of 40, 50,000 jobs, at least half of them high paid.
Yeah.
Six-figure salary.
She's still enough. Yeah. Why she's still enough, I don't know.
These are the kind of morons you're dealing with. I come to this city where I'm from. I was born, I'm back in the Statue of Liberty in New Jersey side of the river, but just in the shadow of Statue of Liberty. And I lived in Manhattan. This city has got so much sophistication on Wall Street and in the corporate world and in the media, so much sophistication. Ivy League University, Columbia, and NYU, and all these things got all these things, but it's still super saturated with stupid people. Stupid people. They're manipulated. When Wall Street bankers, investment bankers here in Wall Street, support a Democratic candidate, it's not because they care about social programs. It's because they care about programs that are going to protect them.
Yeah,
just like they did with Obama and Clinton and the subprime lending. These were Democrats who were mainly responsible for this. Does anybody really in their right mind think that a billionaire like Soros, who funds these left-wing candidates and DAs, cares about the poor? He's a billionaire. These people have a self-interest in what they do. When you see people with that kind of wealth and power backing left-wing political candidates, it's because they're constructing an elitist socio-economic world. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it is simply neo-feudalism. And they're using socialism to do it. And people are stupid enough to believe it. They're stupid enough to believe the lies from the New York Slimes across the street. And
Yeah.
that's what has happened this week in New York
Yeah.
and,
I can't believe
and
we're actually
globally.
reading. Yeah. Jacob, real quick, you're in New York. A lot of things are happening there. I guess the New York State's going after Steve Bannon, a conservative, over the issue of building the wall. I guess he donated to build the wall. Now they're going after him on alleged online scheme. And this is what it's going. This is the charges are money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, in order to build the wall. They're going after everyone and anyone who supported or was involved with Donald Trump. Obviously, the FBI is going to make sure that he pleads not guilty. But this is, again, part and parcel of Joe Biden calling half of Americans, going after them and saying that they're extremists, they're dangerous, we need to fight against them. Well, here's an example right where you are. They're going after, a gentleman who's dealing with online fraud. I guess he can donate to this stuff, similar to Canada. Even though even Democrats believe Biden should not be president, should be impeached. And I support that. I think he should be impeached just on the fact that he gave that speech the other day. But anyway, your thoughts, Jacob?
Well, I agree he should be impeached, but I also agree that Bragg, the prosecutor here in New York, is going after. Bragg is letting murderers out of prison to kill people.
Yeah.
Why is Bragg not removed from office? Why is Bragg not being indicted? Many people would say. Who funds him? Soros. There, you have the political misuse of the judiciary for political aims by the political left. They can't win at the ballot. They can't win at the ballot box. They can't win in the election. So they will politicize the judiciary. That's what they're doing with Donald Trump. That's what they're doing wherever they can. And not only that, no federal charges were brought against him for this. When you have no federal charges, why is the state pursuing something that the Justice Department can't get? It is all politically motivated. If anybody belongs in prison, in my opinion, it is that guy Bragg, who's let murderers out of jail to kill people. There's people in their graves because of him. That man should be fired for neglect of duty at the very least. But there's a question: can an indictment be brought against him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, is no better. I mean, she's
no better.
Absolutely the worst. But Jacob, but in general, the administration not only calling half Americans extremists, which is a joke, right? But Harris goes to pastors, Baptist pastors, about abortion and makes it a spiritual issue. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say things like that. Oh, God bless abortion, like Obama used to say. But this is ridiculous. Going to pastors and saying you have to pick this, you have to choose life. I'm sorry, you have to choose light over darkness.
That's right.
But inverting it.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Aborting babies with no clinical reason is the light, and opposing killing the babies is the darkness. And this woman goes down there and preaches to preachers.
Yeah.
To go for the light over the dark, to kill the babies, that's the light, and to stop it is the dark. This complete inversion. What is this? Isaiah says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Woe. Wow. But it's not just woe to her. It's woe to people who will vote for her and pay attention to her. Again, when people did this in the days of Jeremiah, God's judgment came on the nation because of them. People get the leaders they deserve. We would not have animalistic, demonized, crazy people like Bragg and Harris and Biden in office if it was not something that befitted the people who voted for them.
Yeah.
They're getting what they voted for, but they're going to reap what they sowed.
It used to be, at least Democrats and Republicans, they were corrupt. They would rob the treasury. At least they care for the nation enough to make money, but continue it on. Now it just seems one legislation after another, one thing after another to destroy society, the moral standing, spiritual standing of the state. One example would be Biden's appointees. He got that guy. I think he's part of the energy team who believes he's a transsexual who likes dogs, but men who dress like dogs. Now they got this guy, Dimitri Daskalakis, I think that's his name.
Yes.
He's a Greek guy, but he's an open Satanist, and he's part of the monkeypox response team. He's head of the monkeypox response team. You and I watched some of the pictures of this guy. It is a doozy, and I don't mean it in any
You have a practicing Satanist who puts a pentagram tattooed on his chest, a homosexual Satanist. He's a homosexual Satanist, and he's in the Biden administration. And he's just, of course, parroting the same kind of things that were once said about AIDS. Don't pick on homosexuals and all this kind of, just the same kind of, more rhetoric of the same kind of people. But to have a practicing Satanist in an administration and people are not up in arms about it, well, God is up in arms about it. Read the book of Jeremiah. What happens to nations who do things like this?
Yeah. It's just not only the mutilation of children, the openly egregious, openly support of abortion and homosexuality, LGBTQ plus, all that at the I guess to the detriment of people that don't agree with that lifestyle and attacking people that don't agree with that administration. It is really going back into darkness. And I guess with that, Jacob, we can talk about it's the world going back to the dark ages. And I don't mean necessarily feudalism, although that is coming, that is part of it. But I'm talking about a physical darkness, which is on top of a spiritual darkness. Europe is facing an energy crisis. I've never seen anything like this. Even the 70s, as I've been told and read about it, wasn't a disaster like this. It's coming. It's bleeding into the U.S. and other parts of the world. But let's talk about Europe. Worse yet to come. Civil unrest, socioeconomic pressures build. Countries like Bosnia, Herzegovina, Switzerland, Netherlands, Ukraine are all in line to have major protests and riots over this. Mandatory energy crisis, as the president of the EU. We're going to ration this because it's mandatory. We're going to ration this to flatten the curve. Europeans are in trouble this winter, and this is not a boastful statement or anything like that. I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion. They're making this worse. Switzerland to UK to everywhere in Europe, there's energy crisis. Jacob, what's your take on this, being on this side of the world at this time?
When we look at the energy crisis, you have to understand something. It may as well have been intentionally manufactured if it wasn't. Germany's stupidity of trying to have 100% renewables that only increased carbon emissions, that drove energy prices through the ceiling.
Yes.
And that didn't work because they had to revert to carbon emitting fossil fuels to produce energy. And much of it bought from Russia. You have a working, demonstrable model that this 100% renewable green agenda does not work. It's a failure. It failed in Germany, the world's third or fourth biggest economy. It failed in the most economically and industrially developed country in continental Europe. It failed. Now, the impact on the third world is going to be more immigration from Africa, more immigration from Islamic world.
Yeah.
Into Europe. Okay. Oh, the Queen is white. So you get this racism from this Wesley Lowery. He's a racist. And these other ones in Britain. Okay. Then why are these people coming to Britain? Why are they leaving Africa? Why are they leaving? Why do they want to live here for? What do they want to live in Britain for? If it's so bad. He doesn't talk about that. He's just a hypocrite, a liar, of course, but he's also an idiot. This is going to aggravate the situation. It's going to increase the desire for immigration because what's happening in Europe is not nearly as bad as what is going to happen in the third world with food shortages resulting from this. Now, let's look at Europe. When Donald Trump spoke in the UN, again, I'm talking about not with my Bama anymore, but I could one time have walked easily to the United Nations from where I am within less than half an hour. I used to live across the street from the United Nations. I lived right across the street from it in the 1970s. Donald Trump warned that Germany was putting itself in a vulnerable situation with other countries in Europe by depending on Russian oil and natural gas from the pipelines. He warned. There is footage of the German ambassador to the UN sitting in the UN, laughing at him, ridiculing him, mocking the president of the United States for giving this warning. Well, where is he now? Let's see him laugh now.
Oh, yeah.
It's exactly what Donald Trump warned would happen. Not only that, but remember, it is a global market. I have said before that Putin is waging this war, and it's being financed in part by American citizens at the pump. When you fill your car, you're paying more for oil, which has benefited Putin because we stopped fracking and domestic production.
Yeah.
This, and the only way they even have it under control is by depleting the reserves. Biden has depleted the reserves to try to get the price down artificially, but the reserves are gone. What happens if you need the reserves in an emergency? Now you got nothing. He's a madman. These people, Joe Bama, and I believe Obama is controlling this administration through Susan Rice. Again, as we've said 10,000 times, Biden is simply a senile lapdog. That's all he is. He barks when he's thrown a bone. That's all he can do. He's not that intelligent, but now he's senile on top of it. That's it. Okay, that's Obama controlling this. It must be at least in major part deliberate. Now, I know Obama was incompetent himself. He was a community organizer. He never had any executive experience.
That's right.
He was a professional politician, a professional liar. That was his only real qualification. He was an affirmative action black. He wasn't a smart black like Dr. Ben Carson or like Herman Cain or something like that, or Thomas Sowell. He's an affirmative action black. And a professional politician who knew how to lie to stupid people and white liberals and things like this. He's running the administration through Susan Rice.
Yeah.
Biden has caused this in large part. If the United States did not reduce fracking, we would still be energy independent, and we would not have had to drain the emergency reserves to try to get the prices under control. In fact, the United States could have been exporting oil, and certainly some oil, but certainly exporting natural gas. We could have been exporting natural gas through liquid gas. Now, the fact that the Europeans didn't build the facilities for regasification, that was their choice.
That was another problem. Yeah.
That was another problem, but it was not something that was caused by the United States. But Biden personally and Obama, who's pulling the strings, they bear as much responsibility for what's happening as Putin.
Yeah, and I agree with
you. And the stupidity of the German government. The stupid. In Deutschland, deine Chancellor, du bist einer Dummkopf. Du bist ein Esel. Versteh?
For those who don't speak German, Jacob, translate it for us.
The Chancellor of Germany is a stupid jackass.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Well, it is interesting. I don't disagree with you. I mean, they don't really care. You have that energy, the Minister of Energy, she said, it doesn't matter what they voted, we're still going to support Ukraine and bring the sanctions against Russia, which is crippling Germany. I've watched this, it's not a game show, I guess they call it this morning. It's a show in the UK. They were literally, it's like a dystopian type world where they were literally, there was a competition for a prize. They spin the wheel, and if it lands on, they're going to energy bills for 4 months. That's your price. I mean, it's expensive. I mean, energy in England right now, it's expensive. People look for it as some kind of winning a prize. 6 out of 10 factories are closing. Pubs are closing. People they can't afford to stay open anymore.
Nope, they can't afford to stay open. But let's look at this even further. Yes, it's happening across Europe, and it's going to get worse. But the impact on the currency markets, the only
Oh yeah,
reason the dollar is strong, is relatively strong, is not, again, it's not because of its strength, it's high inflation in the USA, but because the euro no longer has parity, stable parity with the dollar. It's gone below the dollar at one point. Now it has
yeah.
relative parity with the dollar, same as the dollar. And the pound is in trouble also. So both the euro and the pound are going down relative to the dollar. That's the only reason the dollar seems relatively stable. It's not because the dollar is in good shape, it's just that the others are in worse shape. The United States is not because of the government, but just because of the people and the heritage and the good things achieved by the Trump administration. The United States is weathering the storm better than Europe, Britain, better, and certainly better than China. The United States still is on top, not because America should be on top, but because the other countries are in worse shape than we are.
That's right.
The United States has its position by default, not by achievement anymore. The United States has its position as the global leader by default, not by position anymore. And the blame belongs to the feet of Barack Obama and Joe Biden and those who control them, Soros and these people. This is exactly what is happening. This is exactly what's happening. More about Europe. One barometer of Europe, it tells you how bad it is. Switzerland was the safe island of Europe. Geographically, it was in the Alps,
Yeah.
Okay. And it hadn't had a war in over 400 years. And each canton had a high degree of local government. Like county governments was stronger than the national government in certain respects. The federal government of Switzerland left a lot of subsidiarity to the cantons to decide their policies and their laws. Okay. So Switzerland was a bastion of freedom. It was not strategically, economically, or politically integrated into Europe. It was never in the EU. It had the Swiss franc. It didn't have the euro. It was something that was immune. Under Adolf Hitler and the Second World War, and had Mussolini on one side, Hitler on the other, the Vichy French on the other, and it stayed neutral. It got through everything. When you see a fear of social unrest in Switzerland, when you see Swiss banks needing to be bailed out, when you see Swiss Air having gone to the wall, things at one time, it had to be rescued. Things like that never used to happen in Switzerland. Switzerland was immune from everything. Nothing affected it. If they had unemployment, they'd kick out the foreign labor, send them back to where they came from. They all had work visas. Switzerland had to import labor, and if there was too much unemployment, they'd just send the foreign labor out. There'd be no unemployment. Switzerland was, it was the closest thing you could get to a utopia in Europe when the rest of Europe was even a dystopia under Hitler. It was the place, it was the haven. Now that Switzerland is being impacted, and even Switzerland is changing its defense and foreign policy because of the Ukraine.
Yeah, they are.
You know, Europe is not the same place it used to be and will never be again. Switzerland is a barometer, and people who understand history will understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No doubt. Jacob, in terms of the economy, I was reading about the CEO of this company. He's from Finland, and he's warning, look, it's worse than what people are actually saying, even on the news. Finland is going to get a big brunt of it because I think their economy is contracting 4 or 5%. I mean, that's unheard of. The Eurozone, it's contracting. The US is contracting, but Finland is going to pay a dear price, he says. and we need to be ready for it. He's actually the CEO of GNS Economics in Helsinki. So he's warning of a collapse. You got those derivative trading, the derivative trading that they put in 1.5 trillion on a put call. It's how can you even pay for that? I mean, it is in a free fall environment, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be, except for maybe go to a digital currency, a CBDC type stuff, similar to what Joe Biden's been pushing here. Yes. I just don't see a solution now. 30 trillion here with another stimulus coming up. Europe's been spending so much money, sending more. By the way, Blinken came out and in light of all the economic trouble, $2 billion more for Ukraine. So the money just keeps rolling. It keeps flowing. People can't pay their energy bills. I mean, there's one guy that at least has some sense, which is the guy from Italy. What's his name? I think I had his name earlier. Forget his name real quick.
Yeah, not Berlusconi, the other guy.
He's a new guy that came in.
He said stop supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, Matteo Salvini.
You know what? You know what? If Biden had not stopped fracking, Putin would be in real trouble financially.
Oh, yeah.
Now, these sanctions are hurting Russia, but he's still liquid and solvent because of Biden's policies. Biden caused this. Joe Bama caused this.
Yeah.
When the fracking stopped and the natural gas production was almost sequestered, it was certainly curtailed. That drove these oil and gas prices higher and has put money in Putin's pocket.
Big time.
Now, why are you spending billions to help the Ukraine at the same time you're making the American consumer and the European consumer put billions into Putin's pocket? Yeah. You're funding both sides of the war. You're funding both sides.
Yep.
You're giving welfare checks to the Ukraine, and you're paying the ones who invaded the Ukraine. Why does Biden want to give money to Putin and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela instead of to North Dakota and Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana? But this is the corruption of our government.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, Putin's been boasting about it. Hey, the ruble is stronger than when before he invaded Ukraine. Is actually stronger now for those reasons you mentioned. Although he's been hurt and economically, Russia's not doing well, China's not doing well, but they want to get together. I think I'm going to jump in a little bit here. Sorry, Tim. I'm gonna bring the BRICS into this because Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They got this BRICS that's been going on for a while. They're getting stronger. They want to abandon the petrodollar. They want to go to their own basket of currency. Jacob, we've been talking about this since 2020, 2021. What would that mean for BRICS to become stronger versus a Western, let's say a European, Western, American power that used to control it because of the petrodollar? Now they seem to be abandoning it, and now BRICS is becoming stronger due to the things we just talked about.
We have to understand that these things are a result of the policies of Obama and Biden. By stopping domestic oil production in the United States, the petrodollar is automatically weakened. The Saudi Arabians are now saying we are going to sell oil to countries not denominated in dollars. Why are they doing this? Because they feel betrayed by Biden and Putin over Iran. The Biden and Putin, Biden and Obama have licked the boots of Iran, allowing the Iranians to continue terror, continue to support the Houthis who are attacking Saudi Arabia. You've got this wild betrayal of Israel. I'll curse them that curse thee. And Biden and Obama have cursed Israel. And it's Genesis 12 is coming home to haunt the countries that do that. This is what's happening. So the Saudi Arabians are angry because of Obama's policy towards Iran. Well, we're going to sell the petrol now, but it won't be dollar denominated. We're going to sell it in other currencies. So the petrodollar is under attack. I've lost you sound-wise.
Oh, yeah,
the petrodollar is under attack, both because of Biden stopped domestic oil production, because he wanted to give the money to Iran, to Putin, to Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia instead of to North Dakota. Okay,
yeah,
that's the first thing destroying the petrodollar. Second thing destroying the petrodollar is his policies towards Iran that are pushing the Saudi Arabians to turn against the dollar. That is what is causing this. It is the policies of Joe Bama that are the driving engine of this. These other countries could not do it. The BRICS would not get to first base if it were not for the policies of Obama and Biden. Don't forget, Obama took the internet, developed by the American taxpayer. It was developed largely by defense spending, by the Pentagon, because they wanted multiple command and control centers in case of a war.
Yeah.
He took something that belonged to America and gave it to the UN. Yep. He just expropriated, and he got away with it. They'll sell the country down the river in a minute. They've done it with the internet.
Yeah.
Now doing it with the dollar. The BRICS would not be getting the first base had the petrodollar not been attacked. And the petrodollar is being attacked because of the policies of Obama and Biden. And people are too stupid to know it. And the New York slimes across the street aren't going to tell you the truth. Yeah. Now let's look at
Yeah, Jacob, real quick. I mean, this is monumental. As people are listening and you think about it, most of our lifetime, I mean, it's especially those who are younger, all they've known is the petrodollar, but at one point it didn't exist. It was the invention of Henry Kissinger going to the Saudis and saying, hey, we'll provide protection arms. You provide oil to the world for dollars.
Brenton Woods would have collapsed.
Yes.
Because Nixon defaulted on the dollar.
That was the other one.
When he stopped giving gold. So they used petroleum instead of gold. Essentially. Okay. That's what made the dollar the world currency reserve, primarily. Okay. So that's what did it. Now that's being undermined. So they're looking at other things. Now, fortunately, in the short term, Russian inflation is at 15%, and Putin is having severe economic problems, despite the ruble being strong because of Biden. Secondly, China, the yuan is in trouble. It's a weak currency. They have to keep it weak because of exports. But China itself is in trouble. It's not going to be what it was. Okay. South Africa is in trouble. If South Africa did not have gold bullion, you'd have 40 or 50 rand to the dollar. I'm serious. You'd have 40 to 50 rand to the dollar. The rand would be worth about 2 cents if they didn't have gold bullion. South Africa is in a mess. China is in a mess. Russia is in a mess. Brazil, okay, it is not the basket case of Latin America. Argentina is, in terms of chronic economic underperformance.
They actually have better leadership.
Yeah, Brazil is not as bad as Argentina, but it's not that healthy either.
Yeah. No doubt.
And then India's got a problem. India is at odds with China. So how can it be in a currency system with China? Because it is going to be helping China by being in it. So fortunately, there are these other factors affecting South Africa, China, India, Russia, and to a lesser degree, Brazil. But the Saudi Arabians are angry and they're accepting BRICS. Now they're reaching out to Turkey. Erdogan will do it, you know that, and Egypt will do it if it has to.
I was going to ask you about Turkey.
Why Egypt? Because of the toll for the Suez Canal. It's not about the Egyptian economy. It's about the Suez Canal. That's where the oil to Europe goes through. It must go through that canal. Otherwise, it's got to go all the way around the Horn of Africa. They want the toll paid in something other than dollars. That is what is happening. Now, and whose fault is it? Primarily the fault of the American government, of the administration, of Joe Bama. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be happening. They would not be getting to first base. And if they didn't have the problems they already have, if Russia was not in trouble with the sanctions, if India was not in trouble because of its conflict with China, if China was not in trouble because of its debt and its real estate bubble and its shadow banking, and if South Africa was not in trouble because of the just corruption and bankruptcy brought upon it by the ANC, if those countries were not so messed up themselves, they'd already be at first base, getting ready to steal second.
It is a brave new world, and I think I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious or alarmist, but it literally is a change of world. I mean, we've never known anything else. Most people known anything else but the petrodollar being propped up by oil through Saudi Arabia. Now it's changing. Now it's going to be a whole new different economic system, which I'm afraid it's a lot of what we've been talking about: a digital currency, a control currency, a programmable currency, to save some of these nations that have gone into oblivion economically by their own fault, and the fault, of course, of the U.S. government. And in much of the case, like you said, lies at the feet of Obama, Biden, these administrations that have absolutely destroyed economically on purpose. On purpose.
On purpose. But you know, up until the 20th century, there was the term sound as a pound. The British pound was the basis of world currency reserves. Then it became the US dollar, particularly after the Second World War. Okay. Then it became the US dollar. The advantage of having your currency as the world currency reserve means you can write checks and you don't have to cash them. If the United States loses that, it is not ever going to be able to regain the status it has had. Never. As you say, they're looking to replace it with something else. Now, because these other countries are in such a quagmire themselves, I don't think BRICS is going to do it. At one time, they said the euro was going to do it, and the euro has not done it. The yuan certainly will not do it. So anything they've said before, the yuan, the euro, has not worked. It's not replaced. They've not replaced the dollar. And BRICS will go the same way. But what might not go the same way is what you said, a digital currency by international agreement.
Yeah.
What's more, we've said this many times. All you would need is an ERM, an exchange rate mechanism, between the dollar and the euro. And they're almost one for one now.
Yeah.
They're a penny away from each other. Once you have an ERM between the European Central Bank and the American Federal Reserve, where they have to make their interest rates increase or decrease jointly. They can't do it unilaterally. When the Fed does it, the Europeans have to do it, and vice versa. Okay. Once you do that, no matter what you call it, it is going to be a one world currency. Everybody else, the Swiss franc, the pound, the ruble, yuan, they'll all have to fall in line with it. Secondly, the emergence of fiat currencies. Central banks and nations are not going to let those currencies that they can't control become a means of exchange on a massive scale. Look what's happened to the fiat currencies. Okay. They're not in good shape, are they?
None.
You know, there was several of them, but none of them are doing well.
That's right. Now, I just want to remind everyone, please, we're going to be taking questions at the end, so we're almost reaching that point for the end. So if you have questions for Jacob, we're going to put him on the hot seat. This time in New York, we're going to put him on a hot seat, a man on fire, and we'll take some questions. So please send them in. Those who are on Rumble, send them in through Tim, and we'll get to ask those questions in a minute. Jacob, let's finish off with Israel and the Middle East. Massive stuff going on. We'll talk about the possible terrorist attack that was foiled and it was avoided today. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the UAE, United Arab Emirates,
Yes.
their foreign minister is slated to go and speak with Israel, the Israeli leaders, in the next week on the 2-year anniversary of the Abraham Accords. So we're still dealing with the Abraham Accords. No matter how far we get from them, it's still a relevant point. So next week, Abdullah bin Zayed's going to meet, and it's going to be with interesting people. It's going to be with Lapid,
Yes.
which is the current prime minister. At least he's handling all this right now. Herzog, he's the president. Netanyahu and Bennett. I mean, obviously, those three seem to be obvious choices. They're the leaders, but Netanyahu, the talks are going to surround Iran and the nuclear talks, and their concern that's going to be top on the agenda about other things, economic progress and things like that. Unpack that a little bit for us, because I know Bennett met with him in Abu Dhabi recently. So this is a continual thing with the UAE. So what's going on there, and what did the Abraham Accords have anything to do with this?
The Abraham Accords are a spiritual seduction. Much as I like Donald Trump and voted for him, I did not agree with his nepotism with Jared Kushner. The Antichrist will bring a false peace to the Middle East by uniting false religions. The Abraham Accords, theologically and spiritually, are ominous. They're dangerous. They're Antichrist. They are Antichrist. They're of that spirit. Uniting Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, that's an Antichrist agenda. But these people we're talking about, foreign ministers and politicians, the Abraham Accords is simply the platform or the venue for what they're really concerned about. What they're really concerned about is the betrayal of both Israel and the Gulf states to Iran by Joe Bama. That's what they're concerned about. Okay, the betrayal. So they're being forced to go to Israel because Israel is the most powerful country strategically, militarily in the Middle East. They're being forced to get in bed with their enemy because their greater enemy, their Muslim brothers who are Shias in Iran and who are Persians, are being placated by the United States, being indirectly assisted financially by the United States, despite their pursuit of a terrorist state terrorism. This is again treason by Obama, treason by Biden. This is just treason. I don't know how what those administrations did has been treason. The Biden and Obama administration is treasonous. Well, Bush did it with the Saudis. The Bush administration did it with the Saudis. Obama and Biden do it with the Iranians. That is what is happening. They are doing it because of the common fear of Iran. Now, what's interesting is Benjamin Netanyahu. He is in a similar position to Trump in the United States. Will he make a political comeback in the aftermath of what has happened with the Lapid government in Israel? So they want him as a player in the game in case of the future. They know that he is going to remain a kind of ever-present figure in Israel, the same as Donald Trump is going to be an ever-present figure in the United States. He may not be in office, but his presence is always going to be politically felt by those who are. Hence, they want to have Benjamin Netanyahu. They know he could be a future prime minister once again. That is what is basically happening. The real thing that we should be looking at, though, beyond this, is Turkey. Turkey is another matter unto itself, and it is being underreported and not giving the due recognition it needs to have. Certainly, Turkey is in the Gog and Magog scenario of Ezekiel 38 and 39. If you believe that there are two Gogs and Magogs, not just the one at the end of the millennium in the book of Revelation, but another one before that prefigures it, well, Turkey must be included A Turkish rapprochement with Russia and Iran must come into play. What's happening in Turkey is very dangerous. It should not be overlooked. Erdogan is in trouble. Erdogan is in trouble. We need to understand what is happening.
80% inflation, but still the largest Muslim military. It's still the largest Muslim military. So there's still a prowess within the Muslim community. They're trying to get deals, oil. They're trying to get deals for oil and gas, even going into Israel and trying to figure that out and trying to make some deals there too. They got a big deal out of the EU by NATO, by letting Finland and Sweden get in there. They got a sweet deal from that because they were blocking it, now they're not. So it's just an opportunist, but they just don't seem to get out of that out of the news, Jacob. It's like they can't. You think Turkey's going to be gone and they're going to go into basically nothing, and they keep reappearing. It's like they just don't go away, which is kind of
a Turkish warship sailing under the NATO flag entered the port of Haifa last week. A Turkish military was in Israel. He's going anywhere he can to get what he needs to retain power. As you said, inflation has now topped 80% in Turkey. Not only that, but they're lying about the figures. Their stats are not honest. There is a huge black market that is blossoming in Turkey, where people are buying and selling in dollars and in euros, not in the Turkish lira. So what is really happening is being underreported by the government. He's doing everything he can to try to save the lira, but with 80% plus inflation. Argentina is not that high. Russia is high, but 15%. Not the other countries with double-digit inflation don't come near Turkey right now. It's only the countries with hyperinflation like Zimbabwe that are worse than Turkey. It's the worst. Now, what is he doing? They've got two things. One is he waves the Islam banner. Islamism. The other is, as you pointed out, the largest military in the Islamic world. He has made claims that there have been 1,100 violations by Greece against Turkey. The islands of the Eastern Mediterranean were given by international agreement to Greece, most of them, after Greece lost Izmir, the city of Izmir, with Ataturk going back to the 20th century. But the condition was that those islands would be demilitarized. Erdogan is claiming that Greek anti-aircraft missiles that were bought from Russia, some of them, S-300s, have locked onto Turkish aircraft. Turkey bought the S-400, and Donald Trump refused to give them the F-35 as a result, because then they would have intelligence, technical intelligence, of how the S-400 can perform against the American F-35 stealth fighter that they would obviously give to Russia, so that Russia would automatically get. So Donald Trump refused to give them the F-35. But Obama would have given it to them anyway. He doesn't care. As long as it hurts America, Obama would seem to be in favor of it. But Trump, fortunately, did not. Turkey is the only NATO country that has not joined the sanctions against Russia. And additionally, Turkey has seen Erdogan and Putin meet, looking for closer cooperation, particularly economically. They've actually met, and the dialogue consisted of deals with oil and natural gas.
That's right.
So Turkey is in trouble economically. When a guy like Erdogan gets in trouble economically, he does what the Chinese do. He stages a military threat, a strategic threat to cement nationalism, to hold the country together politically and socially in the face of an created or imagined foreign threat. Greece has not acted aggressively against Turkey, and certainly nothing on the scale of what he is claiming. So you have the situation where he's in trouble economically, and he is doing everything he can. He'll go to Russia, he'll go to Israel, he'll go to hell, but he must try to save the lira to save his neck. He's in a desperate people do desperate things. Now, here is always the big problem. It is always the big problem, and it should not have been allowed to happen at the end of World War One. Britain had the power to stop it and failed. Turkey has control of the Dardanelles, of the Bosporus Straits. Access to the Mediterranean and to the global oceans from the Black Sea can only happen by going through Turkey. Okay. Turkey can shut off Russia's access to the oceans from the south. Russia would have to use the Baltic, Leningrad, or would have to use Vladivostok in the Pacific, but it would not have any access to warm water ports in the Black Sea or the Mediterranean. He's got that real estate, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's why they need him strategically in NATO, and they put up with so much nonsense from him. Because you can't trust him. He shouldn't be in NATO, but he controls the Dardanelles. And that is, of course, going back 100 years, the fault of the British government. The European part of Turkey, that is Istanbul, should have been given to the Greeks after the First World War, when Turkey was defeated with Kaiser. And they would have had what's known, I've been to Istanbul a number of times, harem. They would have had the Asian side of it, called harem. But the Topkapi side, as it's called, or Taksim Square and all this stuff, that should have been Turkish. Also, the Turks should not have lost Izmir, but they certainly should have been able to keep Constantinople. What I call Taksim and all the Topkapi, that's Constantinople. The European side of the Bosporus Straits should have stayed Greek, but that's 100 years ago. We're prisoners of history.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Now, Jacob, thank you for that. And let's move into the questions. We just have a few minutes left, Jacob. We're going to put you on the hot seat and get these questions on. So we got a few of them here. Here we go. Jacob, do you foresee more countries becoming republics as a result of the death of Queen Elizabeth?
That is entirely possible.
All right.
I don't think Prince Charles will be able to redefine the monarchy. He doesn't have the wherewithal or ability. He's a globalist. I think what you might see is the British monarchy becoming like the monarchy in Denmark. It will technically exist, but it will mean nothing more than a tourist attraction. It'll have no other reason or purpose.
Okay. Very, very good. Jacob, what do you think about Matt Chandler stepping down from ministry temporarily? Have you heard about that one?
I'm not sufficiently familiar with the situation to comment.
Okay, yeah, Acts 29. He's head of Acts 29. This is the old Mark Driscoll ministry.
Look, Mark Driscoll was a very, very bad pastor. He's a man who should not have been in ministry. His vulgarity alone was disgusting. His ethics were absent. I mean, he should not have been there. That Mars Hill Church thing was a terrible place. What Driscoll was teaching was false. What he did, the Hatcher job he did on the Song of Solomon was disgusting. The vulgarity he would use from the pulpit he reminds me of Chris Roseborough's son. It's just completely disgusting. There should be no place for that in the body of Christ. Certainly not the pulpit. I don't like the whole Mars Hill thing. Now, Matt Chandler, is the problem Matt Chandler or is the problem Mars Hill Church and the whole Acts 29 thing?
Yeah, apparently he was private messaging on social media a woman, and then there was some seemingly there was a relationship going on there. Although the research showed, I guess, that they'd come out with the fact that there wasn't a romantic relationship, but nonetheless, he was messaging a woman, was not his wife. They were in private conversations. It was all private messaging and stuff. A lot of things were said. A lot of things were revealed. They're not coming out and say what it is, but it was bad enough that he had to step down. I guess we can leave the Matt Chandler aside, but Jacob, just as a side note, this is again another pastor who has failed in his commitment, not only as a Christian, as a husband, but as a church leader, and now questionable morality, questionable things with the woman. I mean, you talked about pastors being above reproach, and in any situation like this, I can speak about it for myself as a Christian pastor. But you have warned pastors in the past about not only money, doctrine, immorality, things like that. So obviously, things haven't gone to that far with Matt Chandler, but enough for him to step down. This is a very black eye to the gospel.
Brian Houston, Frank Houston, okay, Pat Mesiti, Carl Lentz, the whole Hillsong cadre, okay. Then you got Bill Hybels, the Jim Baker. Take your pick. It should not surprise anyone, but I'm not sufficiently familiar with the details of what transpired at the comment. Houston, I can tell you what he did was absolutely sin and wrong, and he's not qualified for ministry. And his father, and Mesiti, and Carlin, and Bill Hybels, they're absolutely not qualified for ministry. But that should have been evident to anybody with discernment to begin with, just based on their doctrine, that there's something wrong with them. As I've said a number of times, if someone's doctrine goes off, they're going to go off morally. When you see someone going off morally, they will go off doctrinally. When you see someone going off doctrinally, give them enough time, they're going to go off morally. The two work in concert with each other.
Yeah. Given the Acts 29 connection, I could see Matt Chandler. I think there's Gospel Coalition as well. Connections there. Jacob, will the Antichrist crush the NWO, the New World Order, after the reset so he can take over as world leader? Will the Antichrist crush this New World Order system that's being built after the reset so he can take over as world leader? That would be, of course, speculation, but what are your thoughts? The Antichrist coming in, crushing the current system and becoming a world leader?
The way you see people trying to almost look like they're deliberately trying to crash everything, okay, to create a pure chaos so that the Antichrist can come. Learn the lessons of history. There was a reason that some believers in England, in Britain, Scotland, and Wales thought that
Napoleon
was the Antichrist, and later Mussolini. When you see a chaos like you had in Weimar Germany, and the hyperinflation of Weimar Germany, and the decadence of Weimar Germany, and Hitler comes out of it, or the French Revolution. The French Revolution is even a better example. What you had with Saint-Just, and what you see today is Saint-Just on steroids. The whole thing with Ballat and Robespierre and the violent left. The American Revolution had people who were governed by biblical principles. Thomas Jefferson, who was a deist, he was not a Christian in the biblical sense, but he said, endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. He said, rights that are inalienable, that you can't take away, come from God. They're God-given. The belief in God and the belief that rights came from God was the foundation of the American Revolution. It was not the foundation of the French Revolution. The French Revolution had Rousseau's influence and it had other things like this, but liberty, fraternity, equality, that was not anything that was in any way related to coming from God. Okay?
That's right.
So when you have a revolution like the French Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution or Hitler's revolution. Well, it was not really a revolution. He got in democratically, but whenever you have someone trying to transform the political and economic environment entirely, that it's not predicated on belief in the God of the Bible.
Right.
There's an antichrist spirit on back of it. Okay. There was
very true.
So they crashed the whole system. The way that Black Lives Matter and in Antifa behave now, that kind of insanity. That's exactly what happened in the French Revolution. What was the result? Napoleon.
Yeah.
The Antichrist is going to do the same thing on a much larger and much wider global scale, but it will follow the same pattern. Read the French Revolution. Read about Saint-Just. Read about Balat and Robespierre. Read how that happened. That is what is going to transpire again. Now, there's something else I've warned about. I first did it 25 years ago or more in preparing for persecution and our teaching in Romans. When Rome went from a republic to an imperial dictatorship, and you saw what happened in Roman society, and you saw what happened with the emperors wanting to have themselves deified, turned into gods and worshipped, and the moral outrage and perverted sects, it was bisexual, homosexual, transgender, the whole thing that existed in the Roman Empire we see now. I've said 30 years ago that what the first century Christians were up against in the Roman Empire is what is going to happen at the close of the age. Read the book of Romans in light of the history of the Roman Empire, in light of Seneca's De Clementia and Cicero's Republic. Then you'll understand why Paul was coming. We have tapes teaching it. You can avail yourself of the tapes on the website. That's the first. Read the history of the French Revolution and how Napoleon came out of it. These things foreshadow the way the Antichrist is going to come. I also wrote a book called Shadows of the Beast, how the identity of the Antichrist will be revealed to the faithful church or faithful believers. It is in that book we talk about a lot of these things.
Very good. Yeah, grab a hold of it. Moriel.org, get a hold of it, get it on Amazon as well, but better get it from the Moriel.org website. So, Jacob, thank you so much. This is all the time we have. I'm going to turn it over to you. Final thoughts. This is from New York before we see you out here on the, not only, well, people are going to see you on the East Coast, before we see you on the West Coast. Any final thoughts? Back to you.
This week, I watched the news clip of a teacher of little kids. I mean, little kids learning to read. She had a library. And in this library, in the name of inclusivism, she had books for little kids on lesbian masochism and gay bondage, homosexual sadomasochism, and all kinds of other things like this for kids. And she's there smiling, and she puts it on TikTok, and she says this is inclusivism. How evil can evil get? When you are performing medically unwarranted hysterectomies on underage girls who've not even had menses, not even begun to menstruate yet, because of gender identity, and they're underage. And if you oppose it, you're a homophobe or whatever they call you. This is a society that's lost its mind. It's sick. It's deranged. It is deranged. And it's getting worse. And it will get worse still. They are trying to take children away from parents and make them wards of the state. They're trying to use the racist woke lie to turn children into what they want them to be. Lies like intersectionality, lies like, obviously, the critical race theory, distortions of history, and indoctrinate children with it. This is the world they're trying to create, and they will create it up to a point. But there will be a point where God is going to say, that's enough. In the meantime, he's giving people a chance to get saved and to come to faith in Jesus. We need to preach the gospel while we still can. And we need to prepare for the fact that the Lord is coming to rescue the faithful believers before his wrath is poured out. That is what is happening. That's what we need to understand. Once again, the bad news is good news. When Christ was crucified, it was bad news. But the resurrection transformed it into good news. He paid for our sins and gave us eternal life. What's happening now is bad news. But God is going to turn it into good news. Jesus is going to come. Let's prepare the way for his return. And let's ask God to clean up our own lives to make us what we need to be, so we will be ready when he does come. Thank you so much for listening. If you're in New York or Greater New York, I hope we can see you tomorrow. If you're in LA, Southern California, I hope we can see you at Marco's Church. Hope we can see you in Columbus, Ohio, at Fellowship Bible Chapel. But thank you so much for joining us here on Catching Up. Lord willing, we will catch up with you again next week. God bless.
Amen. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for staying up with us. Well, it's not so late for you anymore. It's actually a little bit earlier than you normally are in the UK time. So God bless. Enjoy your evening in New York. We'll be praying for you this weekend and look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. Jonah, Davey, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you guys. So blessed to have you guys. And we'll see you again. Jacob, keep preaching Jesus. He's coming soon.
Keep preaching Jesus.
Well, blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your prayers, your support, certainly, but above all, we appreciate the grace of the Lord in having you be with us. If you are blessed, edified, challenged, encouraged by what you have been hearing on Moriel, we would certainly ask you to subscribe, to give us a thumbs up, and to tell your Christian friends about us. And even tell your unsaved friends about us in the hope and prayer they will hear the gospel and become Christians. Thank you so very much. My name is James Straker Prash, Moriel Ministries. God bless you all.